everyone, welcome to or welcome back to my channel. My name is Ipawa and I'm back again with another true crime video. On Sundays we talk about true crime that have shocked nations within Africa, and on Thursdays we talk about African mythology and creatures and paranormal stories. But seeing as today is Sunday, we will be talking about one of Africa's most prolific serial killers. Now, a serial killer is defined as someone who has committed a series of murders, usually using the same method of killings with no apparent reason for the murders. But before we get into the case, I would like to give a warning that I do speak of crimes of a violent and sexual nature, as well as child abuse, so viewer discretion is advised. So today's case happened in South Africa, Johannesburg, and it was dubbed as the ABC murders because the murders took place in 3 townships on the outskirts of Johannesburg, such as Atteridgeville, Cleveland, and Boksburg, hence the ABC murders. Now, this crime shocked South Africa to the core, to a point where the then newly elected President Nelson Mandela had to cancel an international trip to visit a site where some of the bodies were found and pleaded with the nation on TV for them to assist in catching this prolific serial killer. Moses Sithole was born on the 17th of November 1964 in a township on the outskirts of Johannesburg, South Africa, which is Vosloorus. He was one of 6 children born to Sophie and Simon Sithole. The family is said to have been very poor, and Simon was the only breadwinner. And unfortunately, when Moses turned 5 years old, his father passed away, leaving the family in even more poverty. His mother, Sophie, couldn't take care of her 6 children, so she ended up dropping them off in front of a police station in Johannesburg, warning them to never tell the police that she was their mother and that they should never look for her. The children were then sent to an orphanage in Benoni and later on transferred to another orphanage in KwaZulu-Natal. When Moses turned 8 years old, he ran away from the orphanage in KwaZulu-Natal to go and meet his mother. They reunited, but his mother had no interest in him and she sent him right back to the orphanage. When Moses became a teenager, he ran away once again from the orphanage to go and live with his brother Patrick in Vosloorus. There he got a job washing trucks at mines around Johannesburg. It's said that Moses became sexually active at a very young age, and by the time he was in his early 20s, he had started raping women and threatening to kill them if they told anyone. In 1987, one of his victims, Doris Wakamisa, recognized Moses Sithole standing outside of her workplace. She then called the police and they came to arrest Moses. But in a blunder that the police made, they put Doris Wakamisa and Moses Sithole on the backy of the police van, and while they were on the backy together, the victim and the suspect, Moses started hurling insults at Doris, saying that he should have killed her and that she was a bitch. Moses denied that he had ever raped Doris, even though he said that he should have killed her, so he was basically contradicting himself. But nevertheless, he was sentenced to 7 years in prison, where he is said to have been sodomized by other inmates and abused and rejected. While in prison, he met his common law wife Martha Ndlovu, a sister to one of his fellow inmates. In 1993, Moses Sithole got released from prison and moved in with Martha. Martha's family was not happy with their relationship, and they could not understand why she would love a man that was in prison for rape. Eventually, they started accepting their relationship, and Moses started working with one of his brother-in-laws as a car mechanic. He later on quit his job as a mechanic and started looking for work. It's said that Moses would carry a newspaper and dress up every morning claiming that he's going to look for a job, but what people didn't know is that in that newspaper he had a knife and he was planning his first murder. Now, in 1994, South Africa had just ended the apartheid era and travel restrictions were banned. Most black South Africans could now travel to cities to look for better opportunities. And for most people that were traveling from these small villages and small towns, they were a bit naive as to how cruel the world can be. And this was an opportunity for people such as Moses Sithole to manipulate his victims with fake employment opportunities. By July 1994, Moses Sithole had met 18-year-old Maria Monana. He charmed her family and introduced himself as Sylvester. He said that he was a successful businessman from a nearby township and that he had employment opportunities for her. They then arranged to meet at a certain train station where they would meet, and Moses would then take her to her new place of employment. Maria then went to meet this Sylvester guy, and they took the train together to her new place of employment. And when they reached their stop, this Sylvester guy told Maria Monana that they had to take a shortcut through the field, which is basically a field of grass and bushes. It said that Maria Monana then followed Moses Sithole into the field, and when they reached a spot where they were out of sight, it said that Moses took out a big knife and threatened Maria Monana and told her that he is going to hurt her because he had been hurt by black women, and this was his revenge. Moses Sithole took Maria Monana's underwear and tied her hands to the back with it and proceeded to rape and strangle her. He then took her clothes and put them on top of her body and weighed them down with stones. A few days later, Maria Monana's body was discovered by a passerby, who then alerted the police. Upon close inspection, the police say that her body was written with a sharp object, and these were the words written on her body. And I quote, "She is a bitch, and I'm not fighting you. We are going to stay here until you understand." Words that are said to have been directed to the police. By November 1995, 5 more bodies of black women were discovered in the Atteridgeville, Cleveland, and Boxburg areas. Most of the victims' bodies were tied with their underwears behind their back, and they were strangled, raped, and their clothing was placed on top of their bodies and weighed down with stones. With this same modus operandi, the police then started suspecting that this was the work of a serial killer. Within a few months, the police started discovering more and more bodies dumped in isolated areas around Johannesburg. It said that it got so worse that they would discover a woman's body almost every week. They then brought in a forensic investigator and psychologist by the name of Mickey Pistorius, who then profiled this serial killer. She said that this serial killer was probably a black man in his 30s who was flamboyant and very charming. And she said that he hated black women and had a high sex drive. The police also interviewed most of the victims' relatives, and it seemed like most of them had the same story, that their relative was approached by a man who offered them a job, and that they had met at a certain train station or a certain taxi rank where they would then go together to the place where the so-called job opportunity is. Moses Sithole started taunting his victims' family members. He called one of his victims' grandmothers and told her that it suits her well that she is now walking over her grandchild's grave. By August 1995, 18 women's bodies were discovered in fields in Atteridgeville, Cleveland, and Boxburg, with the latest victims being a mother and her 2-year-old son. Their bodies were found next to each other, strangled and raped. Now, I'm not sure if this was his way of torturing his victims even more, but it said that more bodies were now being discovered on top of older bodies, which means that Moses Sithole was raping and killing his victims on top of his older bodies. The media then started reporting on these killings, and it caused such a huge panic in Johannesburg, and women stopped walking around at night, and people were just afraid. And I'm guessing because he wanted to know what the police knew so far, Moses Sithole called the police and gave them a tip and gave them his brother-in-law's name as a possible suspect. And when his brother-in-law was taken in for questioning, he would come back home and tell Moses about what the police had asked him, and that way Moses would collect information on what the police knew so far and what type of questions they would ask should he get arrested. And I'm guessing from the information that he collected from his brother-in-law, he assumed that the police had nothing on him, so he took it up a notch. Moses Sithole created a fake organization by the name of Youth Against Child Abuse, where he said that he reunited orphans with their parents. And in 1995, August still, he met a certain photographer who he told that he was looking for an orphanage to place 2 street kids. The photographer then took him to a certain orphanage in Johannesburg called Kids Haven, and there he met a lady that worked there by the name of Trifina Mokgotsi. Trifina Mokgotsi was a single mother who was also a breadwinner in her entire family. She had brothers and sisters who were unemployed and a mother, and it said that she took care of her entire family. Moses Sithole introduced himself to Trifina and her colleagues as Moses Sithole and offered her a job at his organization. Trifina's colleagues at the orphanage said that they were so jealous because Trifina was given a good job opportunity and she was promised a good salary, and they were all a bit just kind of like, I wish it was me. So Moses and Trifina then arranged to meet on the 15th of August 1995 so that he could take her to her new place of employment. It said that Trifina was very excited and she was just ready to work and finally be able to make ends meet. But since her meeting with this Moses Sithole, Trifina was never heard from again. Her family then started getting worried after a day had passed without hearing from Trifina, and they then went to the police station and made a missing persons report. The police started investigating the disappearance of Trifina, and they went to her workplace, her former workplace, which is Kids Haven, and they questioned her colleagues, and the colleagues told investigators about a certain man who had come to the orphanage by the name of Moses Sithole that had offered Trifina a job. Now, the name Sithole is quite popular in South Africa, and the police went to get a photo of a certain Sithole that had been arrested for rape in the 80s and brought it to the orphanage for the colleagues to see if this was the same guy, and all of them positively identified him as the Moses Sithole. A phone number that had been used in calling most of the victims before their meetup with this mysterious man was also traced to Moses Sithole's sister. On the 17th of September 1995, an off-duty police officer was hunting for rabbits in a field near the Van Dyke mine in Boksburg, Johannesburg. There he discovered a body of a woman and alerted his colleagues. As they scanned the field, soon 10 more bodies were discovered, and Trifina Mokgotsi's body was one of them. On the 2nd of October 1995, Moses Sithole decided to call the media, claiming that he was Joseph and that he was responsible for the killings. Sithole spoke to a young reporter by the name of Tamsin de Beer and claimed that he was Joseph. He said that he was responsible for the killings and that he did it out of revenge. He said that he was falsely accused of rape and sentenced to 7 years in prison, and that he killed 76 black women as revenge for this sentencing. Sithole also told the reporter that he chose the women based on the fact that they reminded him of Doris Wakamisa, the woman that had accused him of rape. In the next couple of days, Sithole and De Beer had 3 long conversations, and De Beer then asked Sithole to prove that he was really the serial killer. So he told her of other bodies that were not yet discovered. He said that he actually went to another body that was already decomposed and now in its skeletal stage, and he went to put a metal object on top of the body. He also described where the body is, and when the police went there, they discovered this body and other bodies that he had mentioned that were not discovered. So De Beer then agreed to work with the police and lure Sithole to have more conversation with her. Seeing as Sithole was calling from a payphone, his airtime then got finished, and De Beer offered to call him back, asking him for the number of the payphone that he was calling from. So he then gave her the number of this payphone. Police traced this phone number to a payphone at a train station nearby, and they had a sting operation whereby they were going to arrest Sithole while he was on the phone with Debia. But as they were in conversation, Sithole kind of got cold feet and suspicious and dropped the phone. So the plan to arrest him while he was on the phone with Debia failed. On the 13th of October 1995, Sithole's pictures were released to the media. "Serial killer on the loose," read the headlines, with Sithole's image on the front page. Sithole went into hiding, and on the 18th of October 1995, he called his brother-in-law, Maxwell Makabone, asking to be given a gun for self-protection. Maxwell agreed. The two agreed to meet at a factory where Maxwell worked, but unbeknownst to Sithole, Maxwell had informed the police. An undercover constable by the name of Francis Molobeti went to pose as a new security guard at the factory where Maxwell worked. Now, the other security guards didn't know that there was an undercover operation going on. They thought Francis was just a new colleague. And when Moses arrived, he asked to see Maxwell, and the older security guards asked Constable Francis to go and look for Maxwell. But Constable Francis refused, and this led to Sithole suspecting something, so he took off. Francis Molobeti then gave chase to Moses Sithole, and as he was chasing him, Moses attacked the constable with an axe, which prompted the police officer to shoot Moses Sithole twice, once in the leg and once in the abdomen area. Moses was placed under arrest and taken to a hospital in Pretoria for surgery. After his recovery, detectives then questioned Moses Sithole, but he was not coming forth with his crimes, and he demanded that he be interrogated by a female detective instead. So his wish was granted, and a female detective came in, and it said that while Moses was confessing to his crimes, he was masturbating. Moses Sithole confessed to 10 murders. But the police knew there was more. So they recruited a cellmate of his to record Moses Sithole confessing. So this cellmate then told Moses that he was going to record him and that they would sell this tape and make money off of it so that it can support Moses' daughter, who he had with his wife Martha Ndlovu. Moses agreed to the interviewed recording where he confessed to 38 murders. On the 21st of October 1995, Moses Sithole was charged with 38 murders, 40 rapes, and 6 robberies. Moses was tried in the Pretoria High Court where he pleaded his innocence despite confessing twice to the police and to his cellmate that he had killed 38 women. But fortunately for the state, science came through once again, and the DNA evidence found on the victims' bodies were linked to Moses Sithole. On the 5th of December 1995, Moses Sithole was sentenced to 50 years in prison for each of the 38 murders that he committed, and 12 years in prison for each of the rapes that he had committed, and 5 years in prison for each of the robberies that he committed. Together, that is 2,410 years in prison. Sithole is to serve at least 930 years in prison before he is eligible for parole. So basically, this was a life sentence. Well guys, we have come to the end of the Moses Sithole case, and let's discuss in comments on what could have possibly influenced Moses Sithole to commit these murders. First of all, the rejection of his mother. Do you think this could have influenced him to hate women even more? And second of all, the so-called false accusations of rape against him, and the fact that he also murdered a woman that worked in an orphanage. Do you think that he was taking out his anger on this lady because of the abuse that he had suffered at orphanages? Personally, I do think that Moses Sithole, in the absence of capital punishment, of course, he got a deserving sentence, that is life in prison. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you again on the next one.